Over the last few years, I've had the privilege of speaking directly to so many of you, saying the things that far too many in the media are far too afraid to actually say, and it's been an honour. And I want to express my deep gratitude to this production team, the panel, and my colleagues.
Trump and his allies spent the weekend blaming Ukraine's President Zelensky for that Oval Office catastrophe and are now reportedly demanding a public apology.
Nothing's going to happen with this minerals deal until Zelensky goes in front of cameras and makes an explicit public apology.
30 probation officers facing criminal charges.
Yeah, you remember that whole fight was caught on camera, and what it shows is what the Attorney General calls a gladiator-style fight, where one kid comes in after another and beats up on another kid, all while guards stand around and watch.
Ladies and gentlemen and everything in between, welcome to another episode of Abe Thompson and Other Disappointments. Your twice weekly delve into all things awful. It's Shrove Tuesday. It's Pancake Day at time of recording. And you should very much consider this show a veritable creperie for the crestfallen. So it is. Consider me the Willy Wonka of dystopia, dancing around the shit and piss and awfulness once more. What should we talk about tonight? Oh, actually, I should probably say a quick what's up to the Patreons, to the channel members. What's going on? Appreciate you. You guys give my funny bone a funny boner, as I often say. Right, let's get into it. Shall we? Let's try to make sense of the senseless once more. What's in the news, guys? What's the happy haps? Elon Musk, never too far away from the headlines, is he? Elon Musk agreed to a debate with Jon Stewart of The Daily Show fame. He agreed to the debate with Jon Stewart and then has almost immediately bailed on it because his excuse, his reason... he says that his debate or sparring partner, Jon Stewart, it wouldn't be bipartisan enough. That's the reason that he's given for not going through with it. His debate sparring partner, Jon Stewart, he's not bipartisan enough. And I don't know what kind of debate you thought you were going to have, Elon, like where your debating adversary, the guy that you're going up against, is supposed to harbour, well, like 50% of your own political beliefs. Like, what even is that? That's not a debate, Elon. So that blew up today. We've got the BBC in hot water. This has been a story that's been bubbling up over the last couple of weeks. The BBC in hot water over their Gaza genocide documentary. Apparently, it features the son of a Hamas official in it. People have been telling me that it's not even really like a Hamas general or a Hamas like militant. It's just some guy that did agriculture when Hamas were running the country. I don't know what the truth is, to be honest. But they are in a lot of bother, apparently, because their documentary featured the son of a Hamas-affiliated individual. And so apparently, according to the right-wing press, you should absolutely judge this whole thing based on the sins of the father. So say the same mediums of tedium who tried to convince us that they got their Telegraph internship based on merit and not on their own father's influence. There's no such thing as a Nepo baby in these circles. Unless and until we're talking about Hamas and the BBC. It doesn't matter who your father is, guys. Until it does. Seems to be the right wing's stance on this, and other things. Zelensky, been in the news again, obviously, the last week. President Volodymyr Zelensky is being told to apologize to Donald Trump for Donald Trump being rude to him. That's what he's got to apologize for. That's what he's got to say sorry for now. Which is basically, I mean, what is it? It's like the World War III equivalent of a beaten wife being told to say sorry for winding up her husband. Like, that is what is happening here. It's like, somebody else, a friend of the husband is coming up and going, well, you know how OJ he gets when you wind him up like that? You know how OJ he gets, how Ike Turner he gets when you don't have dinner ready at 5. Now, toddle on, be a good girl, toddle on in there and say sorry through that fat lip of yours. I mean, that is basically the dynamics that are at play here at the moment. Is they invited him in, didn't they? Into the White House. They know what his deal is, right? With the lack of suit and all of that, the attire. They talked down to him, they humiliated him, and then when the whole thing blows up, right, it makes Donald Trump look bad, then they're like, oh, well, I think that we can all agree that was a really unprofessional, unsettling behavior that you made us do. I think that the American people would really appreciate it if you just did the right thing and apologized. And everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, what has he got to apologize for? Well, he made President Trump behave rudely. Right, okay. I mean, he's really clever, this Volodymyr guy, isn't he? Really quite sneaky. If he's been making Donnie be rude to people for literally decades before the meeting even took place. Oh, he's clever. He's a clever lad. Like America are so eye of the storm fucked now, aren't they? Like, I was watching some clips the other day, and it was like one after the other. MAGA representatives, Trump cabinet figures, and none of them, zero, were willing to say that Russia started this war. Objective truth, historical fact that we all remember it happening, and none of them are willing to say that, to just say the truth. Not even say it, just to agree with it. When somebody else says it, none of them will say it. And like, obviously over here, it's not dissimilar. Like, we have people like Farage, who are clearly incapable of criticizing Putin. We all know that. And we have our own misinformation, trying to convince the easily led that Russia didn't start the war, that we all remember them starting, or, retailing out the assertion from Trump that Ukraine shouldn't have started it. Ukraine started this, all of that stuff, right? But we don't have a whole suite of government ministers, like secretaries of state in power with influence, all towing the line, which suggests that it is an agreed line to take, doesn't it? Like, it's been cascaded down to them. This is what you say. Don't blame Russia. Russia are our friends. We can't piss off Putin. I love Putin. Right? Like, I really don't see how any longer, like, at the state that we're in now, or rather the state that America is in, I don't see how anyone can be blind to the reality that Trump is a co-opted Russian asset. How can you be blind to that now, at this stage? Like, if he wants to broker a peace deal, right, is the narrative that's being woven. If he wants to broker a peace deal, and if this is all just about peace and wanting the Nobel Peace Prize, or whatever that theory is, why is Ukraine getting bullied in the Oval Office? Why aren't Russia being expected to give anything up? Why are all the government secretaries of state and representatives unable to state truth and historical fact? Why is the Trump administration giving a direct order now to the intelligence services over there to completely abandon all cyber activity with regards to monitoring or frustrating the Kremlin? Like, why has that happened? Like, it's so obvious. You know? It's right there. It's so obvious, man. But for every one of those, anytime a story like that bubbles up, there's always a voice, isn't there, on Good Morning Britain or Sky News or LBC or the 6 o'clock news, just permanently puzzled. They're like, well, you know, Mr. Trump, he can be a bit of a live wire, can be a bit erratic. You know, joining us in the studio tonight to discuss Trump's truly puzzling behaviour, hugely qualified political voice and author of the book Crayon Pictures for the Under-12s, Mike Michelson. Mike, thanks for joining us. Oh, absolutely. No problem. It's a pleasure to be here. Now, Mike, question one for you. We've seen the Donald relax CIA operations on Putin. We've seen him physically assault Volodymyr Zelensky. We've seen him force feed him his own shit in the Oval Office. Zelensky may well apologise for that later. We don't know. Aye, it's absolutely extraordinary. Yes, yeah, it is. Extraordinary. It's extraordinary behaviour. I also would have accepted bizarre. Oh, damn it. Bizarre. Just on the tip of my tongue. Bizarre and extraordinary. Anything that sort of tiptoes around, like doesn't touch on the fact that he could be a Russian asset and stays this side of critical, we would have accepted. Anyway, let's continue. So he's slapped Zelensky. He's told the CIA to stand down on the Kremlin, and he's talking about completely removing sanctions now from Russia. How do you explain that? Well, Paul, he's a deal maker. First and foremost. Yeah. He's a negotiator, and he likes strong men. Sure he does. And he very much wants to be seen as the peacemaker by mocking Gaza. By telling them that all hell's going to break loose, and the AI video of his development on Gaza with Netanyahu drinking cocktails. Classic peacemaker territory, that, yeah. You know, he's a strong man who wants to be seen as a strong man by being a poodle to Vladimir Putin. Sure. Oh, God, it all makes sense now that you say it. Absolutely. I mean, there you go. It all makes sense. It all adds up. Now, can we cut to an ad break? Let's not look into it too deeply, eh? Like, how in a world of true crime fans and internet sleuths have we ended up with journalists who exhibit all the investigative curiosity of my dad after his second brandy? Like, hey, Dad, I'm gonna be lead soloist at the Easter concert. Huh? Just no curiosity there at all. Like, Dad, I went to Brighton with Jamie, and we got physically assaulted on the pier. You what? I said somebody beat us up in Brighton on the pier. Oh, I thought you said, do you want a beer? Just no curiosity or interest at all. None. From journalists regarding Trump and Russia and what might obviously be guiding all of his behaviour. I mean, do you know what it's like, right? It's like, imagine you had a friend, right? Imagine you had a friend. Her name's Carla, say. We'll give her a name. Carla's married. She's been married for 12 years to this one guy, Steve, we'll call him. And now, seemingly out of nowhere, all at once, Steve is buying new shirts. He's got himself some nice, expensive aftershave, a new watch. He's coming home late from work 2 or 3 times a week. And then when they do hang out at the weekend, he doesn't really want to do anything with Carla. He doesn't want to do any like coupley stuff. And plus, more often than not, she keeps telling you that he sort of flies off the handle about little things, about insignificant things that he never used to get that bothered about. But now he's like exploding about them and then just storming out, and he'll be just like gone for like an hour, 2 hours. Like one by one, you could kind of explain those things, couldn't you? Those behaviors, one by one. You know, in isolation, you could say that, buying yourself a new shirt is quite innocent, right? By itself, using some aftershave for the first time in a while is probably a sign of hygiene awareness, isn't it? You know, maybe Steve is like, I hope I don't stink. You know, it's not really something I've ever really thought about. Maybe I should try and smell fresher, like for everyone. Like in isolation and by themselves, these things aren't necessarily like smoking guns, are they? But when you put them all together, like what would you think if your friend Carla told you all this stuff? What does it all fucking point to? Right? Carla's husband is either cheating or he's trying to cheat with somebody, like he's bored, he's out there, he's trying to find something else. Like that is what is happening here, Carla. I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger. Yes, I can get you another daiquiri, love. And it's the same with Trump. It's exactly the same with Donald Trump. You know, like in isolation, relaxing the CIA cyber stuff that is directed at Russia is like, well, that seems a bit presumptuous that we're suddenly going to have great relations with Russia. Seems a bit preemptive. It seems a bit foolhardy to me, but, I guess he is a bit of a live wire. I guess he is a bit erratic. By itself, in isolation, it's like, well, it's a little bit weird, but maybe there's a game plan there or something going on behind the scenes where it all makes sense with information that I am not privileged enough to know, right? You could kind of make excuses for it in isolation. By itself, having all of your representatives wheel out Kremlin-like, Kremlin-approved talking points might just be coincidental, right? Like it could happen. It could just be diplomacy by itself. Or you don't want to be too brash, too brutal with your diplomatic language. By itself, it's like, well, yeah, okay, maybe there's some logic to this somewhere. But in the round, when you factor it all in together, Carla, like all of it together, man, come on. What do you honestly think is happening here? We don't need any more sugarcoating. We don't need any more fantasies or hiding away from the realities of things. Just tell me what is actually going on here. Just give it to me straight. Sky News, BBC, LBC, and then yes, top up my fucking daiquiri. Elsewhere in Newsland, Darren Grimes has stepped down from GB News. People, pretty sad stuff, isn't it? Darren Grimes stepped down. He's left GB News. Very sad stuff. And of course, he leaves a gaping hole there for all to see as he leaves. Big shoes to fill. Big shoes to, well, it's probably about size 6, I'd estimate. Speaking of Phil of the A Different Bias YouTube channel, I was watching this morning. He was suggesting that because GB News has maybe lost so much money that maybe Darren Grimes is just the latest in a veritable conga line exodus of right-wing crayon eaters. I'm paraphrasing slightly. Phil is infinitely more professional than I. But he was suggesting that he's just the latest in a parade of faces who just cannot wait to be cancelled, basically. He's just the latest figure to be removed in their their cost-cutting mode, right? And he sort of touched on the choice that somebody like Darren Grimes might be faced with. He was sort of being like as though he's Darren Grimes, kind of considering his options. You know, do I stay? Do I go? If I stay, will I just keep kind of petering along with mediocre viewers? Or, you know, the alternative is what I assume he's doing, which is where he leaves, but he reframes his mediocrity on the channel as Labour's regulators. Labour's Ofcom, guys. And he has to walk away from them. He has to escape their clutches to be free online. And so, anyway, GB News let him go. They let him say goodbye to his viewers sometime over the weekend, I believe. I don't know. You've got me. I don't watch GB News, guys. But they let him say goodbye. He had a farewell episode, which suggested it was a mutual decision. They didn't sack him and remove him like they did famously with Mark Dolan, Mark Steyn, Dan Wootton, Lawrence Fox, Cosplay Calvin, etc., etc. Who's the Coast Guard guy? What's his fucking name? Freeview Jesus, that matey. What's his name? I'm never going to remember his name. Neil Oliver, that's the guy. He was also let go, I gather. But as Phil said this morning, GB News has lost somewhere in the region of £100 million. And they do have an advertiser boycott problem. There is a well-publicised challenge around staff salaries, and there were 6 separate Ofcom investigations. And so even though it seems on the face of it to be by a mutual agreement, in the round, to go back to all of that stuff, in the round, it also feels like there might be more to this, doesn't there? Because he does this goodbye thing, his farewell thing on GB News, and it all gets very emotional, guys. It all gets rather tearful. Suggested it was by mutual consent, by mutual agreement, but then he goes on his Substack video and he appears to suggest or allude, albeit covertly, that something else had actually happened.
You can get the reasons. I don't have to go into detail, and I'm actually not allowed to. There are so many things I could tell you, but I can't. One day.
You know, like it's all mutual. It's all by his choice. But then also concurrently, like, I wish I could tell you everything that went on, but I can't. Unfortunately, I can't reveal everything. But in time, you'll, maybe then I can reveal a little bit. Like, it's, which is it? Like on GB News at the weekend, it's graceful, it's tearful. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity that I was given. And then in the blink of an eye, like every other coin-op cunt, he immediately pivots back to this idea that he's been or is being or was feeling censored in some way. And it's like, which is it? Did you choose to leave? Or were you being tamed and tempered and you couldn't say what you wanted to? Because just like the others of his ilk, just like your Lawrence Foxes, your Cosplay Calvins, Mark Steyn, Dan Wootton, he has moved effortlessly straight into that independent content arena now. And that's where you can follow him. I encourage you to do so. Please go and give him a follow. Now that he's been unshackled, now that he's uncensored, guys, unleashed is what he is. Like, if you thought before, like, what he said was edgy, You just wait until you hear what he's got to say for himself now. Oh, Lord. Now that he's uncensored, now that he's unleashed, like they're all so fucking predictable, aren't they? Always the same. Dan Wootton, outspoken. Piers Morgan, uncensored. Boris Johnson, unleashed. Darren Grimes, unleashed. Because as soon as they get kicked out of somewhere, they have to turn it into some fucking free speech crusade of righteous principle, don't they? Can't just take it on the chin. The ego won't allow it. I had to leave, guys. I had to just get on out of there. I mean, the people were lovely there. My team was incredible. I wish I could have stayed, but just something told me I just had to leave. If I wanted to be able to free speech things to you, the British people, to tell you the truth, no matter how much it hurts the snowflakes. Sign up now. Uncensored. Unleashed, guys. Like, imagine how refreshing it would be if just once, when a right-wing presenter came to the end of their contract and they were pushed back out into the job market, if just once, if they then branded themselves for what they actually are, for what their situation actually is, like, then it'd be like, Darren Grimes, unemployed is what you are. You're unemployed. Just say what you are. Darren Grimes, unemployed. No. I'm unleashed, Aid. I'm unleashed and uncensored, I say as I fill out the application forms to McDonald's and Costa Coffee. I'm unleashed and uncensored. Are you? Okay, great. But could you, like, grab the fucking mop and bucket because somebody just spilled a milkshake on table 5, Darren? Get with it. Oh, God. So, he's left GB News, and where has he landed? You know, a lot of these people start up their own YouTube channels, a la Dan Wootton, Mark Steyn, Lawrence Fox did his, like, reclaim the media thing. Where has old Grimesy ended up? He has ended up on Substack, guys. You can find him on Substack. And he's put his first video up. Should we take a look? Let's take a quick look, shall we?
Thank you very much to everyone who has got in touch over the last 2 days. It's either I think it'll go out. It's pretty much a binary choice, right? I think it'll either go one of 2 ways. It'll either be the best decision that I've ever made or the stupidest decision I've ever made. So,
right.
It'll either be the best decision that I've ever made or the stupidest decision I've ever made. So,
I mean, even if it bombs, right, I would say it's the second stupidest decision, maybe, he's ever made. After the time what did he do? He filled out the Electoral Commission, like, registration form or something, and he ticked the wrong box, and it ended up with, like, some sort of court thing where he got fined for electoral spending offences for, like, £20,000. I mean, that was pretty stupid, right? That was fairly stupid. Is this second to that? I don't know. Don't know. All those allegations of sexual harassment towards a junior male straight colleague. So I don't know, like second or third, maybe.
It'll either be the best decision that I've ever made or the stupidest decision I've ever made. So,
where does this sit? Where does this pitch in for you? Answers in the comments, guys. Let's continue.
The trust and the faith that so many of you have placed in me as someone who I hope can champion the ideas that we all care about and believe in, sorely lacking in much of the mainstream media, I'll tell you that.
Right. I mean, I don't want to kick a man when he's down, right? I don't want to shoot holes in his new grift, like, straight off the bat, right? Let's let him get it off the ground first, Aid. Go easy on him, Aid. But this is the thing with people like Grimes, is their whole grift is rooted in this idea that they are saying things that nobody else or few others have the guts to. Right?
Sorely lacking in much of the mainstream media, I'll tell you that.
There is this endlessly promoted narrative that other journalists are censored or scared or tamed from saying what is really going on out there in the real Britain, right? But what are they? You know, what are these things that Grimes says that he talks about that are supposedly not being talked about by other people out there in the mainstream media? Let's take a look. So these are the last 5 videos of his on GB News's YouTube channel, okay? So they're clips of his show on GB News, and then they upload them to their YouTube channel. The 5 most recent one. Oh, and by the way, remember that GB News itself is sort of styled as a free speech alternative, right? It's an upstart challenger. It speaks for the real Britain. Real Britain was actually the name of Darren Grimes' first TV show that he hosted at GB News. Real Britain. Before he was let go the first time by GB News, possibly in relation to those sexual harassment allegations I mentioned. Let's continue. So here on their YouTube, what do we have? We've got his emotional farewell. Then we have, woke nonsense. Some climate science bashing rubbish over here. We have some illegal immigrants hysteria over there. Here we have a thing about non-crime hate incidents. So, like, what exactly is it that Darren Grimes thinks that he's contributing to the political conversation that is sorely lacking in much of the mainstream media? I'll tell you that. Like, you understand what I mean, right?
Sorely lacking in much of the mainstream media, I'll tell you that.
Like, his whole thing is thanks for putting your faith in me, and I hope to be able to speak out on the things that aren't being covered in the mainstream news. But, like, right there, we have illegal migrants. We've got, we need to leave the ECHR. We've got non-crime hate incident stuff. Like, it's basically the fucking Telegraph, isn't it? Like, how is that not just, like, every other day, every other front page of the fucking Telegraph? Two-tier policing, white people being overlooked for jobs, climate skepticism. Like, there's nothing in here that you wouldn't find in a mainstream right-wing newspaper that is then lifted and ejacked out on all of the breakfast shows, LBC, Sky News, you name it.
Sorely lacking in much of the mainstream media, I'll tell you that.
Like, people ask me, like, why'd you get so angry about this stuff? Why'd you let it wind you up so much? Because this is the level of intellect that you're dealing with here. It's like you've got this broom cupboard puppet here, blethering his nonsense. But it's nonsense that is lifted off anywhere else in the reactionary right mainstream press. Like, I'll tell you what he's doing. He's using the Telegraph as a teleprompter. That's what he's doing. The Telegraph is his teleprompter. It's like, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like somebody fed in the last 5 years of Alison Pearson to twat GPT, and pulled it in and just reworded it and then just printed it back out to him. There you go. There's your script, mate. The Telegraph is his teleprompter. Like Alison Pearson and Charles Moore, they might be owed AI intellectual property rights from Darren Grimes, because I honestly, twat GPT is basically what it is. It's just regurgitated Telegraph shit. And so, why is this so infuriatingly stupid, Aid? Well, because, he's lifting the same headlines and bullshit, by the way, from the mainstream media. And then he's running off to Substack and he's like, I say the things that nobody else is saying in the mainstream media. I hope yous will put your faith in me for saying the things that's sorely lacking in the mainstream media. I'll tell yous that. And it's like, is that what you think you're doing, Darren? Is that really what you think you're doing? When you're saying the shit that the Telegraph says, which is mostly fucking rubbish, rehashing and reframing it and putting it back out and then asking people to sign up for your subscription. I need yous more now than ever.
It's why I'm going independent, and it's why I need your support like never before.
Please sign up for my subscription. Come join my Substack. On the basis that you're saying what? That you're saying what nobody else is saying. Except they are saying it, and it's fucking bullshit, and you're just saying the same shit that they all are. That is the level of intellect on display here. It's fucking Ralph Wiggum got an internship. That's what's happening. Sorely lacking in the mainstream media. I'll tell you that. Like, you can just imagine him. You can imagine him bragging to his mam, can't you? Ma'am, I'm a journalist. Ma'am, I'm a reporter. But it's like, no, you're not, Darren. You're not. This isn't reporting or lobbying or campaigning even. This isn't comment. This is karaoke, you bellend. This isn't lobbying. This is lip syncing. It's what you're doing. Nobody else is saying this stuff apart from me. I need you lot now more than ever. Okay. I'll sign up tomorrow, I promise.
Saying the things that far too many in the media are far too afraid to actually say.
I mean, people like Darren, right? People like Darren Grimes. I'll tell you their deal. If you need me to explain it. Darren was a fashion student at Brighton University. And he says the sort of stuff that appeals to a particular demographic who are not fashion students at Brighton University. Now, most of the time, the demographic that he appeals to, they hear the sort of things that Darren says from their friends in the pub, or, I don't know, a football ground or something like that. Like, they will be typically, traditionally older, straight, white men in a pub, babbling about immigrants. Like, they'll complain that Britain isn't what it used to be, or they'll moan about how some asylum seekers were given a free flat near to them. They don't like the idea of Britain becoming more multicultural, more tech, more renewables focused, because psychologically, I think this is what is happening. The more the country changes, as it progresses, the less connected they feel to it. Now, if you don't have your shit together by the time you are, 45, 50, 63 or something, and the country feels like it's moving irreversibly into this new world that you don't really understand, I think psychologically that could leave you feeling a little bit threatened. Like, where do I fit in? Do I even fit in with this new world anymore? I don't look like anybody that I'm passing on the street. Am I an old fart now? Is that what's happened? Am I expired? Am I forgotten? What will become of me? And so I think there's a sort of understandable psychological urge there to try to slow down that progress, to try to bring the country back to a time when it still made sense to you, to when you fit in, to when you felt valued as a cog in a wider machine. And most of the time, that sort of stuff, I think, is confined to British Legion clubs and the pub billiard rooms that these guys invariably populate. But occasionally you get somebody from outside their demographic who satisfies their need to show them that it's not just them. It's not just the older demographic being a bit silly or outdated or feeling threatened or vulnerable or ignored. It is that the country is going in the wrong direction. It is that there was an older time when things were better in the good old days. I mean, the tragedy of it all, really, is that time and progress only go in one direction, don't they? But there is no going back, is there? And to millions of people moving with the progress and with the tech and with the expansion of rights or whatever, it's absolutely fine. It isn't a threat. You shouldn't feel forgotten. You should just get on board with it. But to some people, it does feel very scary And even though there's no going back, having someone like Darren Grimes on TV, not just accepting that your viewpoint is valid, but actually championing it, that must kind of validate you, I think. You know, it makes you feel like you're right about it all, like you've got a point. The country is headed in the wrong direction. We do need to save Britain. We do need to save the West. Guys, like Grimes' deal is basically that he sells validation to fear and ignorance. That's what he does. That's his MO. Is he's like, look at me. I'm a young guy, but get this. I'm right wing. I'm right wing and I'm young. How often do you see that? That's quite unique, isn't it? So that must mean that you conservative ultras are onto something. If even the youngsters, the young whippersnappers, are getting on board with it. You know, it's like I'm young and I'm gay, and even I think that the trans stuff is worse. It's gone too far now. Then you get that whole subset of British Legion and pub types, older, male, straight, white guys who are like, oh, Terry, listen to this. Even the gay lad is saying it now. That must be that I have a point. Like if Grimes was 25 years older and straight and overweight and fucking bald, right? Nobody would listen to a word that he says. Would they? He would just be another angry old white fat bald guy ranting about how everything was better in the good old days. So that is his shtick, is that he's young and gay and conservative and he thinks all the things that the older generations do and talk about in their pubs and in their football stadium cheering grounds. Yeah, okay. I'm also not. I'm not into GB News, and I'm also not into football. You got me, but you get my point, right? I think I had a point somewhere. Yeah, right. So he's young, he's gay, he's Brexity, he's a conservative ultra, he's a right winger, and he was noticed. He was picked up in terms of like media work. He was noticed for and benefits from all of that contrarianism. Because he doesn't fit in the normal box of a young, gay, liberal guy. That's his whole thing. But honestly, like that is it. And like truly, like how is he any different really to like, you know, Douglas Murray or Dan Wootton, also of GB News fame. Andrew Doyle, also of GB News fame. They're all basically, they tick the same boxes. Don't they? They're all satisfying the same product suite demand. They're all young, or relatively young. They're white, they're Brexity, they're gay, and they're right-wing. And now, because they don't fit into the box that you would ordinarily expect a person that ticked those boxes to fit into, that's what's interesting about them. That is their USP. Now they're all like, oh, jump on my Substack. It's the only place that you can catch me, and I'm the only one that will tell you, apart from these other guys over here who are basically exactly the same, I'm the only one who will tell you the truth, unleashed and uncensored. Like, I truly wish that there was some way that we could get these guys back on the rails, right? Back on the rails, back on the straight and narrow, back headed towards and focused on their actual career goals, right? Because I was reading a thing the other day, right? I was reading, it was a post, I think it was on Threads. Maybe it was Blue Sky, I can't remember now. It was shared by somebody. Basically, it said Steve Bannon, who ran Donald Trump's first campaign in 2016, I believe. Steve Bannon originally wanted to be a Hollywood screenwriter. Don't know if you know that. Failed screenwriter for Hollywood. And Ben Shapiro also. Another contrarian, alt-right, grifty kind of thought leader guy. Had a couple of books out. Very famous for debating people and talking like he's on fucking speed all the time. Candace Owens, another one of his cohorts. Candace Owens originally wanted to be a liberal commentator, by all accounts, but she failed at that, and so she pivoted to the alt-right reactionary machine and ecosystem. The guys from Trigonometry were shit open mic comedians. Darren Grimes was pursuing fashion. Like, I don't think it should never be forgotten that the profession, that the ecosystem that these people have landed in was not their first choice. They are all almost universally failures. They're supposed to be screenwriters, liberal commentators, comedians, and in Grimes' case, perhaps some sort of, catwalk fashion designer or whatever. But, I'll tell you who it was. It was Patton Oswalt, the American comedian, shared it. I remember now. Patton Oswalt shared it on, I think it was Threads. And he said, the failed comedian to alt-right grifter pipeline is the shortest distance between 2 points. Because it is. It really, really is. It's like you have the failed comedian. He wants to be a comic. He wants to be a stand-up, but he just can't get there. Until one day, just one day, he just uploads a TikTok, ranting about asylum seekers or bitching about Harry and Meghan, and it blows up, and, suddenly there's another avenue there. Suddenly I'm hilarious now. I found my niche. I found my market. It took me a while to find my voice. But yeah, I'm suddenly really, really popular and funny now. So yeah, never forget that all of these people are failures. And they've actually, the alt-right grifter pipeline that Patton Oswalt is talking about, that is just like the last branch on the way down. They're like, oh, this works. Okay, good. I guess I could do this one for a little bit. Sign up to my Substack. Anything to avoid filling out the rest of the application form for McDonald's. So yeah, Patton Oswalt, American comedian. The shortest distance between 2 points is the failed comedian to the alt-right grifter pipeline. Bravo. And I don't know, there's something in it, isn't there? If we drag this back to talking about Darren Grimes, I mean, I hope his new independent commentator comment thing, I hope it goes well for him. I hope he's onto a good earner or whatever. But I can't help but wonder, is there something else that we can do for him? Is there something that we can do for Darren to actually get him back on the rails, to get him back on the straight and narrow? Fuck signing up for his Substack or buy me a coffee or chipping in £4 super chat tips to whatever that shit is. Fuck all of that. All of the former GB News independent comment fucking tip things. Forget all of that. I think what we do is we start a little collection, right? We'll all just chuck in a tenner. And all it'll be is just Darren, look, we've done a little round robin. We've done a little collection basket. And we're all going to pay for you to just fucking go back to fashion college. Just do what's in your heart. It's the new campaign, guys. You heard it here tonight. Get Grimes to Gucci. That's what we're going to do a collection for. Okay. Shall we try and round off with a weird news story tonight? As is tradition, let's get into it. Okay, so here is a story I have found for this evening. 30 LA County Corrections officers charged with enabling gladiator fights at a juvenile facility, guys.
And breaking news, 30 probation officers facing criminal charges stemming from a months-long investigation into the troubled Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall.
Take it in. Just really absorb what I'm saying here. 30 LA County Corrections officers, right, charged with enabling gladiator fights at a juvenile detention facility. That's what's happening in Los Angeles. 30 of them. 30 in jail officers, like basically cops, right? But for kids. Kids when they're sent to juvie, they call it, don't they? In jail officers charged, not just suspected, actually charged now with creating or coordinating gladiator fights. I mean, it's creative. You got to pass the time somehow, right? Coordinating gladiator fights at it's not just a jail, right? It's not just like a county jail or like a proper penitentiary or something, but a juvenile, a children's detention facility. So it's the longer you get into the sentence that I'm saying, the more disturbing and depressing it becomes. Like, is this worse than dogfights? Or like modestly better? I don't know. Let's read some of it. Let's try to make sense of it. It says, California Attorney General Rob Bonta charged 30 corrections officers, can't do the accent tonight, in Los Angeles County for allegedly enabling gladiator fights at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall. Right. Officers at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall have a duty to ensure the safety and well-being of those under their care. Instead, the officers charged today did just the opposite, overseeing gladiator fights when they should have intervened, Bonta said. Overseeing, it says. Overseeing. I mean, that could mean like two different things, couldn't it? Overseeing means, is an oversight. Or it could also mean, in charge of, coordinating the thing. So, I mean, I'm slightly unclear here. It says the 30 corrections officers face charges including child abuse, conspiracy and battery related to the so-called gladiator fights. According to Bonta's office, the charged officers allowed and sometimes encouraged 69 fights at Los Padrinos between July the 1st and December the 31st, 2023. Well, I mean, New Year's Eve, right? New Year's Eve, like, things can get a bit messy, I think, on New Year's Eve. It wouldn't be the first New Year's Eve I have had or been to where, everyone's had a few drinks, it all gets a bit out of hand, fisticuffs happen. So maybe we give them that one for free, I think. It says state prosecutors said 143 kids between the ages of 12 and 18 were beaten during those 6 months. 143.
Fight.
Like, how the fuck does that happen? 143 kids beaten in fucking gladiator fights in 2023, like just a couple of years ago. It's like some Lord of the Flies, like, battle royale shit, isn't it? 143 kids between the ages of 12 and 18 beaten through those 6 months. Like, how is it in, 2023? There wasn't a cook or a cleaner. There wasn't like even for a second they were like, do you know what? I feel a bit weird about this, to be honest with you. With these kids, with these children being allowed and they being encouraged to physically beat one another until they leave the cafeteria with broken, swinging limbs. Like, I'm not totally comfortable with this, frankly. Like, how does that happen? How did not one person speak up? I mean, that's always the question, isn't it? How did nobody put their hand up and raise a concern? It says the indictment and the filing of criminal charges is an important step to holding these officers accountable and addressing shortfalls at Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall, Bonta said. Let today's charges be a warning for all those who abuse their power. The California Department of Justice is watching, and we will hold you accountable, he said. Okay. They're watching, are they? They weren't watching for those 6 months, though, were they? The fuck were they watching? It says most of the probation officers charged in the case were arraigned on Monday. The remaining 8 will be arraigned on April the 18th. The director of Los Padrinos is among the charged officials. Defense attorney Tom Yu said his client pleaded not guilty. Like, come on, man. Have some fucking dignity. Like, 143 kids beaten over the space of 6 months, and you didn't hear anything about it. Where does the buck stop, if not the director of that juvenile detention facility? Come on, man. His lawyer said they didn't know about this the fights. I mean, how were they supposed to stop something that they didn't know about? Which is, it's a defense, I suppose. I mean, you're basically saying that the director of the facility had no idea, no control over what was taking place in his or her own facility. Like, just a useless director. Yeah, but it's not illegal to be useless. I mean, for God's sake, like, look at Darren Grimes. You're signed up to his Substack. The officers have been placed on leave without pay. According to the LA County Probation Department, accountability is a cornerstone of our mission. We have a zero tolerance policy for misconduct of any peace officers. Any peace officers. Any police officers. I feel like that should be. It says, embroiled in controversy for years, a state inspector deemed Los Padrinos unsuitable in December 2024 after staff could not stem the flow of drugs, failed to bring the juvenile prisoners to medical appointments, and did not prevent retaliation against inmates who filed grievances. I mean, the thing that's missing from this piece on CBS News is, like, I'd like to know what they won. You know, it says like one after the other. They go, like, a kid comes in, they fight, and then whoever the winner is stays on, and then another kid comes in, they fight. It's a gladiator tournament, right? But what do they win? It says like they got a drugs problem in there, in the detention facility. They couldn't stem the flow of drugs, it said. Like, maybe if you win the gladiator tournament, like, maybe you win a fucking, fentanyl milkshake or something. What's the prize for winning the gladiator tournament, for staying on and beating everyone that's coming? What do you win for the winning chief gladiator guy? Do you win a, like, fucking internship with MS-13? Something like. And what do we think realistically is going to happen to the guards from this now? Because I watched the video. Like, the video's, pretty concerning. You put these kids into care. A lot of them come from troubled backgrounds. They need care and encouragement and education and so on. Then they're thrown into this facility where there's these, like, gladiator tournaments. The guards are doing nothing. Like, what should happen to the guards who oversee such violence visited upon the inmates? Do you think they're going to get sacked? Are we expecting to see them jailed themselves? Maybe they get promoted to Guantanamo Bay. I mean, I don't know. Like, they've got a particular skill set. Is all I'm saying. It could be put to good use. It could be put to better use. Just like Grimes's fashion degree. Guys, I've got to go. Got to run inside, look after my babies. Thank you very much for continuing to show love to the podcast, to the paper reviews. If you are not signed up to my Patreon, my channel membership, do give it a look. It starts at only £1 a month. I can guarantee you, probably cheaper than Grimes's. And you won't even need to put up with, like, the presenter pretending that they've been silenced or censored. I don't know if you've noticed, I've worked incredibly hard to remain professionally obscure. Like, all these people, like, they get signed up to, like, Talk TV or GB News, and then they get fired and, like, or let go or sacked or not renewed, and then they end up back on YouTube, right? And for them, it's like a step down. There's something kind of humiliating about it. Oh, I couldn't speak my truth. They couldn't handle my facts and my truth, and that's why I've pivoted back to YouTube. Not me. No, I've just always been here. In my low-budget studio, pre-cancelled by the industry, railing on my political adversaries, like mauling them, just physically beating them down, feeding them their own shit, and then demanding they apologize to me. That's it, guys. I'll see you next time.